My name is Nina Shuman-Dajani. I'm an assistant dean here on campus and also the advisor to the Arab Student Union. I'm going to say some more welcoming remarks in, excuse me, just a few minutes. But before we get started, I'd like to hand it over to one of our Arab Student Union board members who's going to give you a warm welcome on behalf of the Arab Student Union. And then we will jump in and formally welcome our panelists and give them a proper introduction. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Can everyone hear me? Okay, sounds good. Hello. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Latifa Al-Matahin, and I am the Vice President of the Arab Student Union. I am in my second semester here at Moraine Valley Community College and have been loving the journey so far. This past year, I have made amazing connections and memories during my time in ASU. Over the past year, many of our students have been struggling and dealing with heavy emotions due to the tragedy occurring in Gaza. ASU has been a support system for those students to feel safe and comfortable on campus. The events last semester are what encouraged me to become more involved in this club. ASU has been such a significant part of my life, and I've had the best time with the best people. Just last night, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary of our Arab American Excellence Scholarship event. It was a successful night, and we were able to award 10 scholarships to students who demonstrated excellence in their academics. Congratulations to those students. We hope to provide more opportunities to students by continuing this scholarship. Additionally, we had a Moraine Valley student and fellow ASU member, Bushra Bawadi, reading a poem titled A Piece of Fabric. Today we will invite Bushra to say this poem again. When I found out we were doing a women's panel, I was instantly delighted and excited. My whole life, I've been surrounded by remarkable women who do remarkably inspiring things. The opportunity to hear real experiences and journeys excited me. In high school, I was in a club called Spartan Sisterhood. This was a club that focused on women empowerment and created a safe space for girls at school. I was always pleased to host events to share the experiences that women go through, especially Arab American women. I'm glad to have the opportunity to do that once more. Now, I would like to call up Bushra to recite her poem. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bushra. I'm a biology major. I'm glad to have the opportunity to be able to represent this poem. The reason I chose this poem is because it is talking about our hijab and how it gives us the honor and the power of wearing it. Wearing the hijab gives me the power of confidence, and it reminds me of Allah and how Allah is always there for me. Allah is another word for God. A piece of fabric. Colorful bright piece of fabric covers my head, keep it unwrapped all the time till go to bed. Colorful bright piece of fabric is my crown of honor. It is my choice to wear, so why to bother? Colorful bright piece of fabric is my dignity, wrapped with serenity, my path, my symbol for infinity. Take off your scarf, I bet you're bold, you are not in your country, neither is it cold. Colorful bright piece of fabric is not a sign of oppression. It is my internal path for peace, security, and my religious expression. Who said that I can't practice my freedom of religion? It is my human right. My colorful bright piece of fabric is worthy of the fight. Colorful bright piece of fabric opens a gate of fire when ignorant racists call me terrorist at their desire. Colorful bright piece of fabric is my modesty, walking down the aisle with the crown of majesty. Thank you so much for listening to me and giving me this opportunity to represent this poem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bushra, for reciting that poem for us. It takes a lot of courage for our students to get up and be vocal, and especially to be vulnerable in front of their peers and in front of our staff and faculty on campus. So I'd like to give a round of applause again to Latifa and to Bushra. Again, welcome to the library for today's panel discussion in honor of Arab Heritage Month and we have many esteemed guests that will be with us today, and I'll be formally introducing them. Before I do that, I just want to say a few words. As was mentioned by Latifa, this past several months, specifically the last 200 days, has been an extremely difficult time, not only for our students and many of our staff and faculty members, but also for our community as a whole, as we've been mourning and grieving the destruction and death and the continued genocide that's happening in Gaza. Through it all, our students have persevered. They've exemplified resilience on our campus. They have held spaces to be together and to support each other. We've had panel discussions in the library. We've hosted events and solidarity circles, vigils on campus, and many of them are active in the community with other organizations that are doing solidarity work with Palestine. So through that all, they've remained on campus. They're going to their classes as they're mourning and grieving and going through quite a bit of traumatic experiences. And so I do just want to recognize, as we ground ourselves in today's event, and we do honor Arab Heritage Month and recognize that it's a privilege to be here, not only on our campus, but in a safe space to have these conversations that our community is simultaneously grieving. With that said, I would again like to honor the space that we're in today and our guests and welcome you all. As an assistant dean here on campus, I've had the pleasure of hosting many events on campus, but the traditional Arab Heritage Month event that ASU tries to do almost every year and here in the library is a women's panel, and it's always an honor and one of my favorite events. So thank you to the instructors who brought their classes today from our ESL program, and also Meha Swais here with her Arabic class. I'd also like to thank the staff and faculty here in the library for hosting. I wanted to mention that here in the library, we've received quite a bit of support between not only hosting events, but also with providing educational materials. If you walk around the library, you can see some of the amazing books, including this poetry book by Muhammad al-Kurt, which I highly recommend. That's actually on hardcover. And this beautiful book by Angela Davis that talks about solidarity with Palestine. But in the center of the library, there's a book display. And there's cookbooks by Palestinian women and Arab writers, and critical analyses by a range of thought leaders and scholars. And so please pick up those books, check them out, take some time to read through them, and encourage your local community members to come and visit the library and check out what's happening here. It takes quite a bit of work to curate these collections in the library, so please check them out. I'd like to invite my colleague Rafif and co-advisor for the Arab Student Union to share a few words in Arabic before we formally start the panel. Thank you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اسمي رفيف وبشتغل هون في الكلية كمرشدة لنادي اتحاد الطلبة العربي، وبرضه بساعد طلاب اللغة الإنجليزية في Learning Enrichment and College Readiness Department. حبيت أحكي كلمة بالعربي عشان شهر ال Arabic Heritage Month، تقديراً للغة وتقديراً للمكان اللي إحنا فيه حالياً. فأهلاً بكم في الملتقى الثالث للنساء برعاية اتحاد الطلبة العربي. في البداية بحب أشكر المكتبة لمنحها هذا المكان لنا عشان نتجمع فيه اليوم. وكما نعلم المرأة هي نصف المجتمع، وهي من تربي النصف الآخر من المجتمع. فتحية لكل سيدة تسعى لجعل هذا المكان عالم أفضل. وفضل المرأة كبير علينا، لذا لابد لنا من تقديرها، لأنك أنت الأم وأنت الأخت وأنت الصديقة وأنت الزوجة، لذلك أنت جزء وشريك أساسي في نجاح المجتمع. لذلك لابد لنا من منح فرصة لبعضنا البعض للتعبير عن إنجازاتنا وما نقدمه للمجتمع. لذلك نحن هنا اليوم معنا مجموعة من السيدات سيشاركنا معنا تجاربهم في الحياة وكيف استطاعوا التغلب على الصعوبات. فأهلا وسهلا بكم. Thank you for listening, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Nina.
Beautiful. So the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's meet our esteemed guests today. We put a few words about from their bios, very detailed bios on a slide so you can read a little bit about them, and I'll share a few words as we introduce our guests. First, I'd like to introduce Esma Akhras. Esma is not a stranger to Moraine Valley. She was actually an instructor here for several years. She completed her bachelor's degree in elementary education and also with a minor in math education from St. Xavier University. She's certified in teaching elementary, middle, and secondary mathematics and is a licensed administrator in the state of Illinois. She went on to continue her education at Benedictine University, where she received an MED in curriculum and instruction in 2002. She currently works as a student teacher supervisor at Benedictine University and is currently pursuing her EDD through UIUC. She resides in Darien, Illinois, with her 3 children. She's presented workshops throughout the country, is well known in the education field for her expertise, and we welcome Esma back to campus. Thank you for joining us. We also have Nahida Zayed. You may have seen Nahida running into the library because she was coming from court. Nahida Zayed Hussein has been a Cook County Assistant State's Attorney for 18 years. She's presently the first chair of the Felony Criminal Division and is currently working at the Bridgeview Courthouse. She supervises the prosecution of violent crimes, and Nahida has tried over 300 trials as well as 50 jury trials. She has an extensive bio here, so I'm going to read a little bit of it. She's also very much involved in community outreach through her resource group, the MENA Employee Resource Group, which she serves as the president of. She attempts to bring together the employees at the State's Attorney's Office for volunteer opportunities and to create relations with the Middle Eastern and North African community. She's also the president of the Women's Employee Resource Group, which is currently the second largest employee resource group in the state, and her leadership provides mentorship, community engagement, and also she is well known in the community as one of those people that you can call on to do things like this, and she always answers. I would like to thank you for coming back. I believe this is your second time on our panel here in the library. She's married. She has 2 beautiful twin children, a boy and a girl that are 8 years old, and she serves, of course, along with everything else, on the school PTA and involvement with her kids' baseball and soccer teams. Welcome, Nahida. Sonia Ann Khalil is a community activist, volunteer. She is also a cancer survivor and recently ran for state representative in the 36th district. Raised by an Italian-American mother and a Palestinian-American father, early lessons in civic engagement became a lifelong passion for Sonia. She became a precinct captain for her local township at just 12 years old and was inspired by her father, Samer Khalil, who's the co-founder of the Arab American Democratic Club. She's dedicated her life to public service and to grassroots political activism. She has 14 years of combined experience in the office of the Cook County Clerk's Office in the city of Markham, has worked and volunteered for political campaigns on the national and local level for well over a decade. She's also a consultant at a women-owned boutique consulting firm specializing in business, public affairs, and campaign strategy. We know Sonia very well. She's not a stranger to our campus, as she's a resident of our local community, and we welcome you back to our campus, Sonia. Thank you for coming. We also have with us today Miriam Muhammad. Miriam is a Yemeni American. She is a freelance writer for Muslim Home magazine, a digital publication through Sound Vision. She's also a youth mentor and educator through the Mosque Foundation Community Center. She strives to empower Yemeni women through education, civic engagement, and mentorship. She's a mother of 7 children and currently a student at Moraine Valley here with us, where she is pursuing her degree in early childhood education. She doesn't have this in her bio, but I also want to mention she's been extremely helpful with the Arab Student Union over the last few years, and we thank you for all of your efforts. Thank you, Miriam. And last but not least, we have our good friend Rima Suez with us today as well. Rima is a small business owner of RS Advisors, a woman-owned minority boutique consulting firm in Chicago. She has extensive engagement with the Arab and Middle Eastern community and small business owners through the many organizations that she's affiliated with. I'll name a few with you to you. She holds the esteemed positions of serving by appointment of Governor Pritzker's State of Illinois Women's Business Ownership Council, the Cook County Sheriff's Department Advisory, City of Chicago Alliance of Film Festivals, co-founder of Sway's Professional Network. Where's Meha? These Sway's family people do a lot, okay? If you know Meha and you know Rima, they have their own organization. It's called the Sway's Professional Network. She's part of the Arab American Democratic Club, the MENA Council, AMVO PAC. It's also evident through the many influential roles that she's part of that she's quite involved. If you know Rima, she does a lot of work behind the scenes. She's always about getting in the trenches and doing the labor and doesn't like the spotlight. So I twisted her arm a little bit to be on the panel today, but she was happy to be here. For over a decade, she has passionately focused on educating individuals through community resources and opportunities, enabling them to thrive and contribute positively in their neighborhoods. And she believes in strengthening community bonds by promoting inclusivity. So thank you for being with us today, Rima. So let's jump right in. We have a diverse range of women on our community panel today for Arab Heritage Month. They represent different professional experiences, but also different cultural heritage backgrounds. As you heard in some of the bios, we have representation from Yemen, from Syria, from Palestine, from Jordan. And so what that means is that there's different lived experiences that are demonstrated here on our panel. There's also a range of faith-based backgrounds as well. So I'd first like to just open up with a general question. If you can just share a little bit about how your family upbringing, being an Arab American yourself, navigating different worlds, was really promoted from your earlier years till now. How was that influence from your family and from the community part of who you are today as a professional or in your spheres of influence in the community? So just a general question, if you can each give a brief answer to that. We'll start with you, Nahida.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So both my parents, they came here after 1967. They were refugees of the war. Okay. So I'm first generation here. My mom got married fairly young, and so did my dad. They both didn't get the opportunity to finish their education before getting married. Both wanted to finish their education. So my dad did a lot of support for my mom. He was the main breadwinner in our family, and he supported my mom as she guided herself, having kids, being a mother, and going to school. She had 6 kids, got her bachelor's degree, and became a very prominent fashion designer, and maintained many accolades as a result. I got to witness my mom's struggle, and I got to doing all of that, so I was ambitious since I was little. I knew I wanted to get into the legal profession, and I think I fell in love with the courtroom, just watching court TV on TV. So if you guys watch Law & Order and you're enthralled by it, that's kind of how I was when I was even a little girl. Coming from a family background like that, my mom was like, what's going on with you? I'm like, I just love this. I want to be a judge like this, like what he's doing. This guy is helping people. My mom knew that about me, and I was very vocal since I was little. So because I was so ambitious, my parents supported me. So although I come from a background where families tend to support the women getting married and having kids and not necessarily thinking of a career first, my parents said, we'll support you. If that's what you want to do, follow your dreams. We'll try to help you throughout the whole thing. So I come from that background. I'm Palestini. I'm proud Palestini. I come from a background where we had a lot of challenges because I didn't have a lot of guidance when I was little. I didn't have anyone in my community who can tell me what to do to become a successful lawyer, later judge. I'm kind of making those steps. From the beginning, I've been making them on my own. I've gained a lot of friends like Sonia and Rima here, I've known for years. And I honestly will tell you, the community gave me that strength to keep moving forward. So I've been with the state's attorney's office now 18 years. I'm in a very supervisory position in the courtroom. Nothing happens without my say-so. I try cases that involve dead bodies, and I'll tell you, I come from that background. So when Nina asked me to come here, I know this is longer than you probably wanted, I'm sorry,
okay.
but I take every advantage because I hope to be that person that you can rely on for guidance in your dreams, so that you're not alone stepping forward trying to make that career for yourself and a legacy for others, okay? So that's
Thank
my
you,
point.
Nahida. Miriam?
So my story, I guess my childhood was very similar, but also very different from her. As a Yemeni American, we don't really, our community wasn't really supporting women in education. If you wanted to be successful, that meant that you'd have to be a mom and you'd have to be a good cook and all those other things, which there's nothing wrong with that. I've embraced it for a portion of my life. That's why I have 7 children. I wanted to make sure that not only did I outdo the Yemeni woman in our community, where the average is usually 5 to 6 children, I wanted to be one step better.
Overachiever.
Overachiever all the time, yeah. But so yeah, education wasn't encouraged. My mom would encourage us in a way where she would say, "Oh, she didn't read. She was illiterate in Arabic and in English." And when she came in 1980 to the United States, my brother became ill. He had a tumor, and so she was thrown into the hospital and had to deal with a language that she didn't learn, she didn't know, she wasn't familiar with, and she learned a lot. And she brought that knowledge and that education into the home. And so her goal for us was, get your high school degree. That was something that was, to her, it was success, because we were able to read and write and pass that on to our children. Because she would sit by my side sometimes. She's like, "Look, I can't help you. I can't read. I don't know how to read Arabic. I don't know how to, and I can't pass that knowledge on to you. Get your high school education so you could be better for your children." And so from a very young age, I took it as, my kids need to go to college. If I'm going to be one step better than, have that extra privilege, my kids need to go to college, and I had to fight for that. And put them in college. I have one that graduated, one graduating right now. I have 2 here at Moraine. But also taking on that part and saying, well, I didn't even get my high school diploma. I got my GED here at Moraine Valley. But also taking that and be like, well, I don't have to stop there. I can continue to do more. And so coming back to school and pursuing my education and hoping to take that, not just, I have 7 kids, and I've been babysitting all my life, not only just to take care of kids, but instill in them the love of education and the love of learning, so that way they can also pass that on to all the future generations, not only within the Yemeni community, predominantly in the Yemeni community, because I feel like it is something that we definitely need, but also within any other community, because I love to learn and I want to share that love with everybody. So.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asma. I feel like I have to reach over here. Let me get this a little bit more comfortable. So I don't want to be too long-winded, because I know there's a lot of things we want to talk about. So I'm going to try to be as short as possible. I am a Syrian American. Both my parents are from Syria. My story is a bit complex, as all of us, and I think it's really fascinating as you hear the various stories. There's usually a common theme of resilience, empowerment, struggles that are real, but they're different. So I was actually born in Chicago in 1974. My father had come to pursue his medical degree, and then my father was very committed to his homeland of Syria. So he actually did go back, unlike many of his peers who kept saying they would go back, but they actually didn't. My father was one who actually went back to Syria. When we went back to Syria in the 1980s, the Syrian regime at that time. There was a lot of political upheaval, and then unfortunately he was imprisoned. I have very vivid memories of that experience. I was about 5 to 7 years old, and have memories of him being imprisoned under the Assad the Father regime, and have memories of when he was actually also had come out of prison, the torture he had gone through. And then we came back. My father at that time had decided to come back to the US. My mother is also of Syrian descent. She had finished her high school degree, did not go on to college. And when we immigrated back, I'm just one of two, so a little bit unique. We're only 2 children, which was always a little surprising to other Arab families. You're only 2, and yes, we were only 2. I think Syrians at times have a little bit less children. My husband is Egyptian American, and he's also only one of 2. So we have a very, very small family, which makes it a bit of a challenge. And so my mother, like I said, had finished her high school degree. I came back, and I considered myself an ELL student, a student of second language. I did not know English. It was very difficult. I have vivid memories of my mom taking an Arabic dictionary, looking up English words, translating into Arabic, and then translating for me at the 3rd grade level. And so education was very important to us in our family household, and that's how much my mom was tried to make sure that we were understanding, even at 3rd grade, was looking at dictionaries. My father had tried to find tutoring for me to help me learn the language. Anyhow, so growing up, we were also very involved in the Mosque Foundation. I went to Aqsa School as a high school, so my family my parents were very committed to making sure that I understood what my background was, what my heritage was, who we were as a people, and that was extremely important. And I myself was very motivated to I love my culture. I love my faith background. It is so in my blood. It's not even funny. I hear Feiruz, my eyes tear up. I get exposed, and as you see, my features don't look Arab. So my story is even more unique because I'm always having that dual identity struggle of people questioning all the time. Are you really Arab? And then within the Muslim, are you, just constantly being questioned of who I am. So you can only imagine the complexity of me constantly questioning my identity and developing myself. But as a female, I had realized very young at age 1, I was blessed to be part of a community and had some female role models. My high school Islamic teacher, till this day, I keep connected with her because she was a real role model who spoke about woman empowerment, who spoke about having, advocating for your own self. And so as someone who was young, I was very aware of oppression and women's struggles, and that really used to bother me a lot. And I knew that one of the very ways that women can be empowered is by working. So I was very committed to finishing my college, and I was one of the very few of my peers who actually worked before I was married, because I knew how important finance is, and not only to females. So now I have 3 young adult children. I have 1 who's in high school and 2 are young 20s, and I'm always telling them, whether you're male or female, the most important thing in life is to be able to be financially independent on your own. And I really grasped that at a very young age during my middle into high school years, and was very committed to always being financially independent. And that's something I had seen because I had seen so many women struggle because of either being in horrible marriages, horrible family situations, and couldn't get out of those situations. And so that's where I think a lot of my passion of being as an empowered, whatever that means. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to, not Kevin. I mean, as females, we know this is something culturally across various cultures. So it's something that I was very young to be very keenly aware of injustices, and specifically towards gender.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Part of our title today is Defying Stereotypes. And you had touched on, those features. And I mean, one of the things that we are constantly challenging are the stereotypical images of Arabs in general. The notion or assumption that all Arabs are Muslim, the notion that we all look the same, that, there's stereotypical images that we're bombarded with in the media and in Hollywood movies that show you what a typical Arab looks like. And you can just look around campus to see the diversity in our community, of course, but thank you for touching on that, because it also within the community, it also becomes challenging sometimes to navigate those spaces when there's also inter-community.
No, I always say I'm navigating them always internally and externally, because internally people don't believe I'm Arab, and then externally people don't also believe I'm like both ways. I'm always like, I really am. There's a recent book by a journalist, and I forgot Hala Golan. She wrote, I forgot the title, but it's something like, she also is fair and had to continuously defend. There's a certain element where you're always constantly feeling you have to defend yourself, which by now I'm almost 50 and I'm tired. I don't even care anymore. You can think whatever you want. I'm so done with this. I'm confidently who I am, and I don't feel the need at all. And like when I was 20, it's not the same, but there's this constant
Yes.
toy happening.
Thank you. Sonia.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? My name is Sonia Ann Khalil. I attended Marine Valley for a little bit, so you guys have a great school here, and you're lucky to have Nina as your dean. I come from a very diverse background, and I relate to Esma in that when they say people like, oh, is she Arab? Is she Italian? What is she? I'm both. My mother is an Italian, crazy, loving nurse. My father is a very proud Palestinian. My parents' story is funny. I'll share it with you guys. They met because my father used to teach belly dancing to pregnant women at the YMCA to make money in college.
That is hilarious.
And they met at a baby shower. It was my mom's friend and my dad. That's how they met. He tried to sell her insurance. Got to give it up to our people. They're always hustling. My father, when he came here, I get emotional about my dad. He came here when he was 18 with nothing. Went to Wright Junior College. He worked at Brock's Candy at night. And during the day, he would go to Wright Junior College and ended up going to Southern Illinois. He was the first in his family to graduate school. My father had instilled in me politics at a very young age. I remember seeing my father arrested on TV. I remember me and my cousins sitting around at my uncle's house and like, oh, Amma's getting arrested, and I'm crying. And I don't know why my dad's getting arrested. But now as I sit here and after running for office and being involved in politics, I'm proud of him. I am proud of the struggle that my father went through. I'm proud of watching him go through that because he spoke up for our community at a time when politics was something we were scared to speak up for. Allah yarhamha Maryam Zayed. And my father started the Arab American Democratic Club over 40 years ago. They were the first two involved in politics in the area. And I remember going to protests. I remember sitting at meetings with him. I remember being the child at the sign-in table. I wasn't into sports. I was involved in politics, and I'm proud of that because there's not enough of us involved in politics. There's not enough of us running. There's not Rima, me, Hannah Juba, and I think Sabha Aboud are the only people, and Nina helping us, are the only people really involved on that side. So I knew at a young age, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get involved. I wanted to run for office to give our people a voice because we don't have a voice. Alhamdulillah, we have Abdul Nasser now, who is the first Palestinian state rep, and we have Nabila Saeed, the first Muslim state rep. And we need to keep going. We cannot stop. Esma's cousin Suzanne is running for state rep, and that's something that's important because we need people that look like us, that represent us, that are gonna take our struggles. Because I seen how hard it was for my father, and it's the seeds that he planted that, we're able to run today and do the things that we're able to do today. So I ask that, if you're not involved in politics, I know I'm getting out of the way, but
No, this is
I ask that you
still
guys
valid,
get involved
important.
because I know we go to protest and we sit there on Michigan Avenue and we scream, trust me, I'm one of them. But until we start voting, until we start getting involved, until we start doing these things, they're not going to pay attention to us. And I hate to say it that way and just be blunt, but it's the truth. Rima and I deal with it on a daily. Elected officials will tell me, your people don't vote. Your people are not involved. And it'd be a shame for the work that Maryam Zayed and my father did for us not to be involved, for how hard they worked and the suffering that they went through, the work that they did for us not to do it, it would be a disservice to them. So that's where I get my love of politics and why I push so hard is to make them proud. So the pleasing of our parents and the upbringing, being Palestinian and being proud, it's something that you always have to hold that in you. I'm proud to be Palestinian. I'm proud to be Italian. But I understand what Esma said, some Arab would be like, oh, she's not Palestinian, she's Italian. No, I'm proud of both, but both sides are very family orientated, and the food it's a lot of carbs on both sides. So you have to watch what you eat. but I love my parents. My parents growing up was like, I love Lucy in the house. I tell everyone this. My mom was like Lucy, and my dad's like Ricky Ricardo. She does something, then my dad swears in another language. So that's my house, but my parents genuinely love each other. And growing up in a house with two different faiths, my mom never converted. You know, my parents were respectful of both. We celebrate Eid, we celebrate Ramadan, we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Easter, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to grow up in that upbringing of that household that I had, because it taught me the best of both worlds. And it showed me that we can work together. And love really does overcome everything. And, you know, our people, we love so hard. And I say this story, and I promise, Nina, I'll shut up.
No, this
But
is great. We're here for it.
Knocking on doors, when I would go knock on doors and meet people, it was the Arab families, not knowing, because I don't look Palestinian, would be like, are you hungry? Do you want tea? Do you want water? Do you want coffee? Do you want juice? You want snacks? We have, you know, chocolate. It was the Arab families that were always so welcoming and not knowing. And as soon as I would tell them, no, yislimu, they're like, oh, inti Arabiya? And I'm like, yes. And they didn't know I was Arabi, but they were so giving and so welcoming. And that's who our people are. And that's what I want people to see, is how giving we really are as people. We'll literally give you the shirt off our back and not think about it. And that's what I want for our communities, people to understand that we're just, you cut us and cut them, we all bleed the same way. We're humans. So that's really what I want for everybody. So that's
Amazing.
it.
Thank you, Sonia. And I know you spoke about how proud you are of your father, but I'm sure he's just as proud, if not more proud of you. So.
When he's not mad at me. When I don't drive him crazy. But yeah, I'm an only child, so my dad says I'm like 10, so you know.
You are. Ked Ashra. Yeah. Rima, not, you know, no offense to everyone else. Save the best for last. We'll put it that way, right?
Yeah, she's the favorite daughter, too, so yeah.
No, but really, Rima, now you've had a chance to warm up to the mic, so bring it. What do you have to share with us?
Rima Suez. I'm Jordanian and Palestinian. And I grew up in the city in downtown, away kind of from all the family, all the Suez family. And
Speak into the mic.
and all the Palestinian families here. So I felt like I was always balancing everything: the city life, the suburban, cultural, very cultural life, the Thanksgiving dinners that have mansaf and waraq dawali and a turkey. So my family was always pretty diverse in living in this city and just acclimating to everything. And they've always been supportive with any endeavor we took on. And even in politics, Sonia, and there's 2 others in the entire state that do this, all women. So we found ourselves in these spaces that we're the only ones here. And thankfully, like, our family's been very supportive to keep that going.
Mm-hmm. And if you know Rima well, she's usually working in the back of an Uber as she's running to meetings, or she's at City Hall, or maybe somewhere here in the suburbs helping with a campaign, but she's done quite a bit behind the scenes. So for this next question, I'm going to start with you, Rima, and then we'll make our way down. You know, representation is important. We spoke last night at the scholarship event for our students. I touched on the fact that I'm the only Arab American administrator here on campus that sits on our admin council, which is made up of our president, our vice presidents, deans, and directors, and we have a large student population here of Arab heritage. So sometimes I find myself in the room as one of the only representatives, although we have several faculty and staff on campus of Arab heritage, and you're sometimes in these rooms or in these settings as the only voice for the Arab community. And I say this all the time, you know, we are not spokespeople for the community. We're only one specific, you know, one person with a specific take on things. So we don't speak on behalf of the whole community, but sometimes you're put on the spot to do that. So how important is it for you and for all of you sometimes to navigate those spaces where you may be one of the only people in the room of Arab heritage, and how do you navigate that?
Sonia and I are business partners, by the way, so we generally...
I'm her biggest headache.
You can imagine we're usually the only women in the room, let alone Arab. So imagine how little representation we have. So we take it seriously. And Nina reminds me time and again, too, that it's not enough to just sit in the rooms. You actually have to use that to try to shift policy or try to make your voice heard for your community. So it's just advocating, staying on top of it, getting yourself in these rooms no matter what, and just using those platforms. And it seems minute sometimes. It's just a little meeting or this or that. It's the only time your voice is heard.
Yeah. I'm going to think back to a story or share a quick story. A couple of years ago, I think it was at City Hall, they were doing a Christmas tree display, and they were doing Christmas trees from around the world. And each Christmas tree was decorated with ornaments from specific countries around the world. And so Rima reaches out to me. She said, they're setting up Christmas trees at City Hall. I need some Palestinian stuff. And, they don't have one for the Arabs. And Jesus is from Palestine. And we need to have a Christmas tree at at City Hall like everybody else. And so she decorated this. She single-handedly collected items and made this beautiful decorative Christmas tree at City Hall that had not only Palestinian representation, but Jordanian and other Arab cultural items. And again, sometimes it's just that, like having that little bit of representation in these settings, right, that make you feel included. So thank you. Sonia? Yes, why not? Give a round of applause.
So we'll go off since I ran for state rep, and like Rima said, we're business partners and best friends, and I'm her biggest headache. But when we talk about representation, like Nina said, it's hard because we are the only woman in a room, sometimes only an Arab in a room. And like I said, we are in rooms with elected officials from state, federal, local, and they say, your people don't vote. I'm going to get into my election just a little bit because it goes to representation. My district has a huge portion. The 36th district goes from Willow Springs all the way through Palos Heights, Palos Park, Oak Lawn, Chicago Ridge, Worth, Evergreen, Mount Greenwood, parts of the 18th and 19th ward of Chicago. Now, there's only 4,000 MENA registered Arab in that whole district, MENA registered. I know there's 4,000 MENAs in Oak Lawn alone.
And you're referring to Middle Eastern, North Africa.
Middle Eastern, yes. So our community, our Arab, we need to be more active because, like I said, we can go on Michigan Avenue and protest all day long. Until we start voting, they will not pay attention to us. And I mean this with everything that I'm saying. I could have won the election. We lost by what, Rima? Like very little. Very little. But if every one of our people voted, I could have won. And by us saying that, that's showing them you had one of your own, you still didn't care. You still didn't go out and vote. So why should we pay attention to you? That's why representation in these rooms is so important. Rima and I, we can get access to them because we've built these personal relationships with people. But we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for all of you sitting here. Like the work Nina does, Esma does, and Nahida and Mariam does, it's for you guys. It's not for us. We're getting, like she said, we're getting at the age where we've put in the work. We've done the effort, and we're planting these seeds for you guys. My father and Mariam Zaid planted it for us. We're just picking them up, and we're replanting them for you guys. But if you guys don't vote and push your parents to go out there and start doing things, none of this matters. None of it. So that's why representation is very important.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle of representation, if you don't mind, and not to be a bit of a rebel or feisty or, as I'm usually told.
We want to show the diversity and opinions on the
Yes.
panel, so please go ahead.
So it does matter. I'm not going to negate that. It is extremely, not only does it matter, it is crucial. But here's where I want to start to shift some of our thinking on this conversation of representation, because I'm quite honestly tired. I'm not going to lie. Been carrying that weight of representation since I can ever remember. And it does get exhausting, despite how much I am so committed to it, because I believe it is extremely important. But I want to twist I want to shift the conversation of my community members at large. And this is where I want to try to shift our thinking. I sit on panels. I'm extremely involved in schools, and I forgot to bring this into my bio, which I should have. I recently won our school board election, which was not an easy feat by any means. I was not predicted to win. I really was not, and I won by a couple of hundred.
You worked really, really hard on that election.
I did work really hard, and I will
Yes.
never do it again, and not because I don't think representation, but it was a very difficult campaign. It was probably the most difficult one in the school board area that I've been told. I'm not sure historically fact, but I do believe it was if not it was a very difficult one. Regardless of that, I also serve on various conversations of school vision and mission. What does it mean when we look at diverse populations? And here's where I want to pivot that conversation. I shouldn't have to own this myself or our minority positions. our community at large, our mainstream society needs to own it. Everybody should be saying, we want representation. I shouldn't have to tell you I need to be represented. You should be telling me, I want you to be here. And that's where I want us to shift that conversation. I am tired. Every single person in leadership should be saying, I want someone of special needs. I want someone of color. I want a female. I want all that representation. I'm advocating for me. I shouldn't have to keep saying, I need you to represent. I need representation myself. I want everyone to be asking for it. And I think that's where the conversation really needs to pivot. And usually when I am in these conversations, I do use that platform to say, hey, what are you doing about asking for representation? I shouldn't be the only one. And none of us. And so that's how I'm trying to, that's what I meant. I'm going to be a bit of a rebel because we shouldn't have to be carrying it just ourselves. It really is extremely important that every one of us, and this is usually how I advocate, I want to hear a different position. I don't want to just hear Arab Americans. I also want to hear Black Americans, Mexican Americans, everybody that has a different diverse, because that's the only way as a society we will become better. I am fully convinced of that. There's no hesitation in my mind for that. And so it is important to have representation, but we all need to own it together. And that's the point I want to make. We equally need to own that conversation. I shouldn't have to keep saying it, or neither any of us. Every single person should be asking for it.
Thank you. Absolutely.
So, as a Yemeniya, I have to say that we fall under the umbrella of Arab Americans, but oftentimes Yemeni people are left out. And so being in a position of, like she said, putting your foot in that door and getting to those tables and getting kind of does fall on certain people at the beginning, but it's falling on, it's tiresome. I'm 43, and I'm already kind of tired of it, but I also know that there's still a lot more work to do before I can just put it down and leave it to the younger generations, predominantly because our community is very private. The Yemeni community is very private. We tend to keep to ourselves, and even within that, within our own little groups, and we're very tribal. So kind of being out there, being on a panel like this is very uncommon. But, I guess I'm taking one for the team, or I don't know how to phrase that at this point. I'm the sacrifice, but it's to create a path for the younger generations and other Yemeniyat to be able to say, hey, no, I can sit in front of people and I can talk about my experience. I can talk about our struggles. I can talk about our, what we need as a community and maybe how we can empower each other and what the community can do to help empower us. And so, as Asma said, it is sometimes exhausting, but then you sit down, you take your break, you shed some tears, you curse, in the privacy of your own room. And then you get back up and you dust yourself off, wipe away the tears, and you continue doing it. And that in itself is a privilege, but also saying under the umbrella of Arab Americans, like, hey, us Yemenis need representation too. Calling the library out and saying, we want to see some books that specify Yemen, our culture, our heritage, because it is different. We not only are we different as people, we're also different with our food and with our the way we dress and the way we communicate and our language and our dialect. And there's so much diversity and beauty in it that we need representation. And so representation also is important because when we come together in a space like this, where there's different people, people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different races, representation is important because it allows us to own our own story and speak it and not have anybody else come and say your story, speak up for you. It's you owning your story, you owning your narrative, you owning your culture and your heritage and sharing it with the world. Yes, we do have some things that we need to work on, but also we have so much to take pride in and so much to love and so much to share, and representation allows us that opportunity. And so I am thankful that I was asked to be on this panel today as a Yemeniya, and I'm thankful for the library for allowing safe spaces like this. But it's all about ownership and telling your story and defying those stereotypes. So
Thank you. I do want to add also a layer to, and I know some of the students have class that ends at noon, so we may see a shuffle in some of the seats here, but Asma had touched on, that we can't do this work on our own, right? That the allyship and the help and support from other communities is so important, which we're seeing on full display right now with the genocide that's currently happening in Gaza, that the outspoken individuals around the world don't only come from Arab backgrounds. We see representation in terms of solidarity movements from all backgrounds, including from the Jewish community. But I wanted to also say it's not just about representation, right? So we can have someone that looks like us, sounds like us, that has a name like us at a table, and they could stay silent and just not say anything, or they could also work against us. So, I mean, just an example of that, and it's a very unfortunate example. We're seeing that currently at Columbia University with the repression of student protesters. They have an Arab American president who's a female Arab American president at Columbia, the first ever Arab American representative at that level of administration at Columbia University, which, as you all know, is a very prestigious university, whatever that means these days. And she's completely working against the students right now. So representation alone is not enough, but having the allies in the room and also making sure that when you have that representation that you're actually utilizing it for positive, not only for your community, but for the communities you serve at large. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I don't want to, I hope I wasn't sounding disgruntled talking about being tired, but it was really just making
absolutely.
a push because it is such an important priority for us to continue moving into the future as a country. I'm sure all of you are following a lot of our conversations. And so I want to push this accountability not only on ourselves. I completely agree with Sonia that her campaign, I followed along, and I brought my daughter, who was also a cancer survivor, to meet Sonia. And we got a chance to connect. And when she did not win, I was fumingly mad, because our community should have came out. But beyond that, our mainstream community should also be saying, we want someone like Sonia to come in here. That's where I'm getting frustrated. Mm-hmm. We need our mainstream people who have power, people of privilege, to say the same message. I shouldn't be the only one. We shouldn't be the only ones. It's got to come from also people of privilege, people of power. And I will hold those people accountable, because that is important for our survival as a country.
Absolutely. And as many institutions tote DEI as part of their core values, and not only here at Moraine Valley, but most institutions these days, we need to see it in action and not just on paper. Absolutely. Nahida, thoughts?
Sure. So representation, for me, it's a little different.
Speak into the mic, please.
Can you hear me? No. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So for me, it's a little different. So I'm navigating in the criminal justice system. And as a prosecutor, the representation I stand for comes for a community, not just, I personalize with the Middle Eastern North African group, right? Because of my heritage. But the community I represent, unfortunately, are the most desperate, because they've been through the most tragic of times. So my struggle, or my representation for them is not highlighted. It's not a lot of things that a lot of people can understand, because it's a private sector. Criminal justice system is open to the public, but what we do is private. What I engage with when it comes to the tragedies with victims and witnesses, you will not hear, unless maybe you sat in a trial that we did. You will not see the work we do outside of what you may see in the courtroom. And more work is done outside of the courtroom than there is inside. So representation for us, when I first started in the criminal justice system, was nothing. When I started in appeals in the city, and I quickly advanced to Bridgeview because that's the community I wanted to be in. And when I got here in Bridgeview, I was the only Arab. I was the only Middle Easterner. And when I was in the courtroom, I was in front of judges that had no idea who I was. I didn't look. Middle Eastern to them because I wasn't wearing a hijab, wasn't wearing a scarf. And they didn't think of me as Middle Eastern. And when I spoke, and I've always been vocal, even when I was little. So when I came into the courtroom, I immediately let them know who I was. And I remember one of the first conversations I had with a judge in Bridgeview, he identified how large of a community we had because he presided in a courtroom that dealt with misdemeanors. And he's like, I know that there's a large community of Middle Eastern people here. I don't know what you guys, I don't know about your faith. I don't know about your culture. I know I drive down Harlem, but I don't know why it's always so congested. I know there are women that come in here that some are with hijab, some are without, some of them speak English, some don't. I don't know why that is, other than maybe some of them came from overseas. So I took it upon myself in my small sector, and I'm gonna call it a small sector, but the criminal justice system is so large, to make it a point to teach. So I did cultural awareness training with judges and lawyers, and I did it in the private, like I was by myself. So whenever there was an event at the Bridgeview Mosque, this was back in early 2000s, I took judges and lawyers with me. When we had the iftar dinners, they came with me. They were interviewed, mind you. I mean, like Italian, Irish, sitting there with their cigars back when they could do that, and being interviewed by Al Jazeera or being interviewed by Hyatt Magazine, and then identifying with what we're doing. The representation in the courtroom was a slow progression for me, but the fortitude that I had led me to this point. We have Middle Eastern, North African identified people in our office, but we're so large. We're the second largest prosecuting agency in the nation. Independently, in the last six years ago, I tried to start a MENA employee resource group. I got pushback for 4 years. I didn't stop. And 2 years ago, I got clearance to start one. So for 2 years, we've had a MENA employee resource group. Thank you. And since then, we've created a budget within the State's Attorney's Office to do community engagement, social activism, mentorship, recruitment. This is for our representation. And because of that, I was able to identify individuals within the office. And in the last 200 days, since the beginning of since October 7, I had people who knew who I was in the office, who was part of our employee resource group, come individually just to have private conversations and tell me how much they were feeling like there's just no identity, or they were feeling isolated. And because we had created a group, we were able to create mental health awareness. We were able to create paths of social justice so that we can form not only a group of people who we can support each other in therapy sessions, which is much needed everywhere, let alone with what is happening, but that only became real because yes, we're tired, of course. Like, we can say this all we want, but you think any one of these women on this panel is gonna stop? They're still going till last breath. And I'll tell you, that fortitude, that representation is necessary, right? And in order for it to happen, you have to be, that tenacity, continue to push. We're gonna continue to push, but we don't do it alone. All of us have a struggle within whatever area that we're in, but it's not going to happen by ourselves. I've been able to use this what I've established to help other women in our office do the same. Men too. Like, this is not just a women struggle, right? But it's not going to happen unless we get together and we recognize everybody's pushing forward for this, right? Our community is going to get stronger in every different sector. I'm doing it on my end, but that doesn't mean it's not affecting what Sonia's doing, what Rima's doing, what Esma's doing, what you're doing. Like, we are basically all continuing this path, but we all impact each other. Mm-hmm. Believe me when I say this, do not leave without talking to us and getting our contact information, because if you really want to make an impact, you really want to make a path for yourself, you need these connections. And when we form these connections, we form a bond, and that representation grows that way, okay? It's by numbers. So that's what I had to say about that.
Thank you, Nahida. That was wonderful. I have a couple more questions, but I would like to give an opportunity to any audience members who might have questions to ask a question. So I'll take a break for a moment. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question or make a comment? No. Latifa? Go ahead. You want to? I'll repeat it if you want to go ahead and ask. It's okay. Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Latifa brought up something critical, which is tokenization and not being tokenized or not being like used as a representative just because of the way you look or what your background is or because you wear hijab or because you might identify as a woman or female. So you don't all have to answer, but if anyone would like to provide some advice about how to navigate, I guess, the tokenization, but also having, the courage to speak up in those settings, without it looking as if you're being tokenized. So, go ahead.
My first advice is you really take the time to be you. If I go back to my 20-year-old self, I realized how much I continuously was trying to advocate for Muslim female in my 20s. And at that time, I have the luxury, obviously, looking at it now as someone who's almost 50. I actually was sharing this recently. I was like, gosh, I feel like in my 20s, I was trying so hard to defend my identity, right? And that's part of normal psychological upbringing. It's normal. That's okay. But when I look at it back now, I'm like, I tried way too hard, like just way too hard. And my context personally is very different than where you guys are at. So I cannot, when I tell my kids, I have a 26-year-old right now, which is like mind-boggling, but the time is so different. We really were a minority. Not to say we're not a minority right now, but when I'm talking about minority, we were really, our community was extremely small back in the 1980s. Like, you literally can be the only minority person in your whole school institution, right? And that's what I mean by minority. So it is very different. And so perhaps that was what I felt. But my advice to you is really get to know yourself and solidify your internal self. Mm-hmm. And never feel that pressure that you speak and involve when you have that conviction in your own self, if that makes sense. Yeah. And don't feel that pressure. Because if I was to tell myself at age 20, I believe I was carrying way too much for someone who was only 20 at this time when I look back at it. So try to just really focus more on developing yourself and who you are, and strengthening your own internal voices and your internal identity, and then work through when you feel comfortable and confident.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also just going to mention, as I've done many cultural awareness trainings on campus about our Arab American students. And one thing sometimes instructors lean on the Arab or Muslim student in their class to be a spokesperson for the whole community. Or I see you, shaking your head, Jeffrey. I know you've done so much to support our students on campus and in your classroom, create safe space. But we do have faculty that sometimes do that. They assume that a student in the class may have something to say about what's happening overseas or in their country of heritage or in the community, and not all students want to be that representative or should feel obligated to speak on behalf of anything related to their country of origin or the region in which their family heritage may be from. So I would say that in general to the students, don't feel obligated to be a representative. It's not your place. Of course, speak up when you feel comfortable, but don't feel obligated. Miriam, you wanted to add?
First of all, you are young, because you said that you aren't, but you are very young, and there's still so much ahead for you. But I think finding your voice sometimes is one of the hardest lessons that you're gonna ever have to learn. society in general, we're not even talking about just Arab society in itself, but society in general has always had this thing where a woman is to be quiet, not to use her voice. I just saw something recently that talked about within the United States that women who you talked back to their husbands, spoke up, talked about their anxiety, talked about like any struggles that they were dealing with were put into mental institutions and sometimes given lobotomies and given, and so that was a shock to me to see that it doesn't only happen in our culture where we're told we're supposed to be a certain way, we're supposed to act a certain way, and so finding my voice from when I was very young came from